Hey guys, it's Sharma Review for Happy Death Day to You. And what Happy Death Day to You is essentially about is, as we know, after the events of the first film, Tree has been able to break the loop. She's now living her life with Carter, and she seems to be very happy and things like that. However, through an event that I will not spoil in this review, she does end up back in the loop, and it is the same day. However, things are a bit different this time. Different things are happening. Certain personalities have been switched around, and the killer is not just going after Tree, and this makes her realize that in order to save everyone, she's going to have to keep dying in order to hopefully break this loop once and for all. So, Happy Death Day to You overall. While I was initially not excited for this film, I really did not see the point of it. I was optimistic about it because the first film I was really dreading, as you guys remember, and I ended up loving it. It was one of my biggest surprises of 2017. I actually rewatched it a couple nights ago. I'm still surprised by how good that film actually was. It was such a good character study and a really great film that perfectly satirized like Groundhog's Day and things like that. And coming off the heels of that film, I just didn't really see where else they could go. It seemed to be very much a standalone. I just did not really see what we could have gotten out of a sequel. But the fact that they were keeping things so hidden and things like that, I was a little bit more optimistic. And I have to say, this film once again surprised me. Happy Death Day to You is actually a really damn good sequel. There's definitely a lot to really like about this film. It's really different than the first film for sure, but that's really why it is all the better, and we're going to get into that in a little bit, but first we got to talk about the cast. And similar to the first film, everyone is really good here. I actually do think the majority of this cast really did step up their game from the first movie. I really do think everyone did a really great job here, but especially when it comes to Jessica Rothe, who I think, similar to the first film, is really proving herself to be a very capable actress. She's so likable as Tree, and she gives an even more energetic performance here. Tree, in general, she has to go through a lot more in this movie, and I really liked what she ended up doing. She's a lot of fun to watch, and also since she has gone through the loop before, she's a lot wiser this time. There's certain things that she did in the first film that she didn't really do here, and what Rothe does with this role, showing how experienced Tree is and showing how much she's changed from the first film, I think was really well done. She's funnier than she was in the first one. She is more emotional than she was in the first one. You've seen how much she's grown as both a character but also an actress, and I think in general Rothe is just really fantastic in this role. I loved what she was able to do here. I think she really has carried this entire franchise, and again, it's another actress that I'm always on the lookout for. Ever since the first one, I've always been on the lookout for her, and I think after this film, I can officially solidify her as she is definitely a star in the making. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more from her after these films, and I really do hope that happens because I think she's a really great actress, and I can't wait to see what she does next. But it should be noted that the rest of the cast is just as great. Broussard, once again as Carter, does a really good job. These two still have really great chemistry. I thought they worked very well together. He definitely has some really good moments throughout the film. Also, and this is expected if you've seen the trailer, but Phai Vu as Ryan is also great here. He has a lot more to do in this movie. We get a lot more into his character, and he is so much fun to watch here. Some of the best moments in the first half of the film are just with him, and I really liked what he did in this film as well. He's a really good character, and I definitely am excited to see where they take him after this film. Someone who really stepped up her game, though, for me, was Rachel Matthews as Danielle. I didn't really think much of her in the first one, but I thought she was hysterical in this film. They give her a lot more to do. I don't want to spoil where they end up going with her, but there is one scene especially towards the third act of this film. She honestly had me dying. I thought that she was absolutely hilarious. In terms of the supporting cast, she really was a huge standout for me. I loved what she ended up doing here. I thought that the supporting cast overall, they all really did do a great job. Everyone really is on their A game here. I really did love what everyone brought to the table, and there really wasn't anyone, for me at least, that didn't really seem like they were giving 100%. I thought that maybe because, the first film, a lot of it is stuff you've seen before, that maybe the cast wouldn't be as into it, but no, they really were just as good, if not better than they were in the first film, and I can definitely give everyone that. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, because it is, of course, directed by Christopher Landon once again, who I think had an even harder task than he did in the first one, because the first one, you know, was much more of satirizing Groundhog's Day and things like that. But coming off the heels of the first one, since everything is wrapped up, it can be hard to figure out where to really go. And I think Landon did the smartest thing possible and actually decides to go in a completely different direction, because to my and many other people's surprise, this isn't really a horror film, and that's something that the trailers aren't telling you. In fact, it's much more of a sci-fi film. The comedy is very much still there too, and I think those two elements work hand in hand. But in the same way that the first film was more of a comedic horror film, like I said, this is much more of a comedic sci-fi film, and I think it works very well as that. And I think it was definitely a very smart decision. The sci-fi elements, they actually factor in quite well. There is a very interesting sort of multiverse sort of scenario going on, and I really did like the directing here. The film, honestly, I think is even funnier than the first one. The first film is definitely a lot of fun, but I was cracking up way more at this one for sure, and I think he did a really good job with directing this one, and knowing where Landon wants to go further with the series, I think is a very good plan. He's actually explained that every single film, it's going to have a different feel to it, and I think for a series like this, where things can feel very repetitive and sort of, you know, just the same in that way, I think it makes sense to go about it that way, because you're always going to be getting something different from these actors, and I think it was definitely a very smart decision. In terms of the writing here, like I said, this is not anything like the first film. The trailers kind of are telling you that it's kind of, you know, you may think is a rehash, but it's really not. If anything, it really is expanding the universe in a very exciting way that I wasn't really expecting. The film plays with time in a way that I wasn't really expecting either. There's a lot of references to Back to the Future, and that's one of those things that could have gotten annoying, but it's actually very welcoming, knowing that they're bringing something different that we didn't see in the first film. It's really exciting to watch where they end up going with it. I don't want to spoil what actually is going on in this film, but I will say, we do actually find out what is causing the loops. And this is something that I've said before I didn't really want answered, but seeing where they went with it, I'm actually happy that they said it, because I think it's actually a really cool idea. It makes a lot of sense, and I like where they ended up going with it. I think that's definitely a very interesting thing to do. And as far as Tree goes, the focus is still very much on her. Like, sure, there's a lot more going on in this film, but the focus is still very much on Tree, who I would argue goes through an even more impressive arc than she did in the first one. This is a much even more emotional arc for her, because without really spoiling too much, things are very different in this world, and there's one significant change that you can tell really is having an effect on her. It's something that she's kind of at a crossroads in that way, because she really has to make a very difficult choice throughout the film, and I really liked the way this was handled, the way they go about things with her, and showing how much she's changed as a character, and her realizing that by, you know, staying in this other universe where things have changed, she may very well just retroactively change everything, is a really cool idea, and I think it was definitely a very smart way to go. It's different from what she did in the first movie, and I was overall very impressed with her arc here. I was not expecting them to give her all that more to do, because it seemed like a lot of it was wrapped up in the first one. This one tells us we didn't even really know the half of it. There still is a lot going on with her, and I was really happy with the way that was done overall. And with that being said, I think it was very smart with what they ended up doing with this other sort of universe she's in. The different things that have changed are really cool ideas that I wasn't really expecting. One I thought was downright hilarious, and I loved the way it was done here, and I really did love that a lot. But again, very good stuff, a really good script overall. It's consistently funny. There is one montage, especially, with her having to die over and over again. Absolutely hysterical. I mean, probably one of the funniest things I'm going to see all year, and I loved every minute of that. But again, really great in terms of the writing. I think the writing is honestly even better than it might have been in the first one here. It's very sharp and clever and very witty in that way. The cinematography in this film also is really well done because of the fact they are delving deeper into the sci-fi stuff. It actually does look really good. There's one scene especially that is very thrilling to look at from a visual perspective, and I think they handled that very well. I really did like the visual style to this film. It's different from the first one, and I think it's definitely very impressive here. The score I enjoyed a lot as well. The cover of Staying Alive played at the end of the film I enjoyed a lot, but the score, it's pretty much the same. There's nothing really too impressive about it, but I did enjoy the score here overall. There is one cue that's towards the end of the film that I did think was really impressive, but other than that, the score is pretty much just there. And the editing, the film I don't think is as tight as the first one, but I do think it is still well edited. The film pretty much did fly by for me. There wasn't really a point where I wasn't into what was going on, and again, for a film that I didn't really think had that much more of a story to tell, I really did love the pacing here. I thought the film was very well paced. It's very entertaining in that way, and I really did like the editing here. So between the riskiness and the different directions this film goes in, you'd think that maybe this film is better than the first one, and not quite. I do think there are a couple problems with this film for sure. The biggest being they introduce something in the beginning of this film. They make you think that they're going a certain direction with a character, and it's not like they don't do something with it. They for a while, actually, it's very focused on this character, but there comes a point where they just kind of drop it, and they don't really come back to it, and that definitely did disappoint me a bit. Also, as much as I did enjoy all the supporting characters in the film, I didn't really feel like they developed them all that much different from they did in the first one. Danielle, at the end of the day, is still the mean girl. Carter is still the nerdy guy that, you know, Tree ends up with, you know, the other nerdy people in the film. That's kind of all they are. I just didn't really feel like there was that much to them, and I feel like they could have developed them just a little bit more. Considering how much stuff they did with Tree, there definitely was considerable room to do that, and I think they could have just given more to them. And maybe it's just because of how much I enjoyed the characters, but I think there definitely could have been a bit more there. Also, there are a few jokes that really didn't hit very well at all. And I will say, the killer reveal in this movie does feel a bit more predictable. It was something where I kind of, especially from one shot, I pretty much saw it coming. Whereas the first one, I thought it was actually really shocking and really well done. Though it was a bit haphazard, I appreciated how surprising it really was. This one, I thought was a little bit too obvious, and I think they could have done a little bit of a better job with that. Overall, this was much better than I expected to be. It expands the world in a way that I wasn't really expecting. It plays with the ideas of time and things like that in a much different way. The characters are better. Tree as a character goes through a much different sort of arc, but I think an even more greater one than she did in the first movie. I thought it was funnier, and they do actually set up some really interesting stuff for a third movie that I didn't think I wanted to see, but I actually do want to see where they're going with it. Like, what they set up is actually really interesting, and if they were to make a third movie, which hopefully they do, I mean, I can't speak for myself because I saw this in like the middle of the afternoon. There were 2 people in my audience, but I really hope people go see this movie because they are doing something really different and something that is really out there for a film of this nature. And it's very rare for a horror sequel to even match the quality of the first one. And the fact that this even did that, I think, is impressive. But at the end of the day, I enjoyed this film immensely. I thought it was very entertaining and just overall was a much better sequel and much more necessary sequel than I ever could have expected. And I'm definitely going to give Happy Death Day to You overall a B. But overall, guys, in my review of Happy Death Day to You, let me know what you guys saw this movie overall, let your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.